Hello everyone, it's Aaron here from Push Square. So the other day I put out a tag that asked you what some of your 2023 predictions were. It didn't really need to be like a serious thing or something that would definitely happen, but just some of your thoughts of what you thought was going to happen in 2023 in the world of games. So today's video is going to be about going through some of those, some of my own predictions, and then some of the predictions of the team here at Push Square. Let's just jump into it because I'm sure this is going to be a pretty long video. So starting out, the one that I put in the community post is that I thought that there was going to be a revival of some kind of a classic series in Sony's history, and the example I used was Resistance. That's not to say necessarily it will be Resistance, or I think it will be Resistance, but I really do think that in the age of remakes that we are in, remakes, reboots and so on, it really is kind of like an easy win for Sony at this point, and I really wouldn't be surprised if something from its past, whether that be in the PS3, 2 or 1 era, will make its way to PlayStation 5 in 2023. So looking at your comments, there was a lot of call out for Resistance, there seems to be a lot of love there. Legends of Dragoon, Infamous, Jak and Daxter, Killzone. There's a lot of particulars around some of these choices, like Infamous was Sucker Punch, they are now doing Ghost of Tsushima. Killzone was Guerrilla Games, they are now doing Horizon. So would the original studios go back to work on these, or would it be a brand new thing? Maybe we'll get Bluepoint Games making some stellar remakes. It wouldn't surprise me if it was handed off onto different studios, because these are, you know, older games now. The development studios or the development houses have moved on to other properties that are now super successful, so I think it would need to be a new developer from that standpoint, but I genuinely do think we will get something like this in 2023. So looking at, I've got two guys in particular that, two commenters in particular that have supplied me with a couple of predictions here, and I like some of these. Some of them are pretty realistic, I think. Some of them maybe I'm not too sure on, but let's see. So first up, we've got Steven Jan Cadena. Now, I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that there, but you've got 4 predictions here. Sony will try to acquire another big publisher. Yes, I think the publishing, the acquisition wars are far from over at this point. You know, Microsoft, Activision, that's a whole thing that's going on, and it will probably continue to go on throughout 2023, and I think there's a potential that Sony will use that to its advantage and try and collect maybe some of the smaller companies. I think acquisitions are going to be a pretty big part of the way that big companies like Sony or Microsoft are going to operate from now on, so I think that's totally within the realm of possibilities in 2023. You've also said that Twisted Metal is back. This wouldn't surprise me either, because I'm pretty sure that they're making a TV show at the moment, and there's rumors of a live service game, a live service version of this. So yeah, I feel like if you're bringing back a television show, you're probably going to be pushing out a game at some point as well to tie into that. It makes sense business wise, so I don't see why it wouldn't happen. They commission at least one exclusive from Bungie. Bungie is supposed to, or rumored or stated at some point, that they are going to release, or expected to release, at least one new IP by 2025. We now know that they're working on multiple unannounced projects, so I think it is totally expected for at least one of these to be exclusive. Sony doesn't spend, what was it, like 3.9 billion or something along those lines to buy Bungie, and then for them not to do anything exclusive, there's going to be something exclusive in there, and I'm kind of excited for it, because if it's a first person shooter, it's not really like a genre, I suppose, that Sony focuses on too much. I would love to see that be a big change moving forward into 2023. Next up though, one unannounced game coming in 2023. I would like this to be the case. Because we've obviously had a pretty big year for Sony exclusives. We had Gran Turismo 7, we had Horizon Forbidden West, we had God of War Ragnarok. I'm sure there was something else. Oh, The Last of Us Part 1 remake. So we had like some pretty big hitters, Sony exclusives, PlayStation 5 exclusives and the like. 2023 so far has Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, 16, something else in the earlier part of the year. My memory's completely, I'm losing it right now. I would love for them to just like hit out with, we've just announced this game and it's coming out in 3 months time. I think that could be in line with the Revival series that I mentioned before. I think that we could just get, you know, here's Resistance 1 completely built from the ground up for PS5 and it's coming out in October or something like that. I think that would be awesome, especially since outside of Spider-Man, there's nothing really like at the Christmas window at the moment, at least, especially in Sony's lineup, so that would be nice. So moving on to the next commenter, we have the Vitruvian Man. So they've said that The Last of Us multiplayer comes out in July. I had a theory a while ago that's half proven to be wrong already, that this was going to come out in July like 16th or 19th it is, or sorry, June 16th or 19th, because that is the 10th anniversary of The Last of Us. July, the reasoning was that there's a lot of big games coming out in June, wouldn't want to compete with it. But honestly, I think if you're talking about a multiplayer game for a post-apocalyptic third-person series, I don't know if it would contrast too much with something like Final Fantasy 16. I believe that's the one that's out around then. I don't think that would put them off. Like the 10th anniversary to me, if The Last of Us comes out, The Last of Us multiplayer comes out this year, June, the 10 year anniversary, it makes too much sense. It's too clean. Will only be a few months after The Last of Us television show has finished, so hype and momentum and all that, you want to capture it when it's there, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case like in June. So I don't know if I'm agreeing with July, but you know. So next up, they've also said that there will be a reveal for a Naughty Dog, a Santa Monica, a Sucker Punch, a Blue Point game, one of the big hitters. There's going to be an announcement for one of those games. I think we'll get the Ghost of Tsushima 2 announcement this year. Naughty Dog I'm not 100% on, just because they have the multiplayer game, although of course there's rumblings going about right now for The Last of Us Part 3. Could I imagine them announcing it at this point? I think it's maybe a little bit too soon. And they want to be focusing on that. I can imagine them announcing a PS5 update for The Last of Us Part 2, so there's maybe that. But yeah, I think we are pretty much like at the point for an announcement at least of Ghost of Tsushima 2. And then like I was saying, Blue Point, one of the remakes, could be one of the remakes or the reboots. I'm just saying it could be there. And lastly, you've got here, new console. A new console will be $400 without the disc and $50 in addition with the disc drive. So of course this is alluding to the long rumoured new model of the PlayStation 5 that will have a detachable disc drive. So you no longer have just like the digital and the disc version, you've got just a PlayStation model that can add a disc drive if it wants to. I am not convinced that it's going to be this year. I think we're maybe just a little bit too soon, because we're not even at the 3-year mark at this point, you know. I think 2024, almost 100% we'll be seeing something like that. I can imagine maybe an announcement of it at the late part of 2023. I don't see it releasing this year though, in all honesty. Let's quickly move on then to some of the staff picks. So we had the guys over at the Push Square website lay down a couple of predictions. Now I've not included all of their predictions, I've picked one each. And you can go over to the website to read all of our predictions. We all had 3 each. I'll leave that link in the description below. But first up, we've got Sammy, who thinks that PSVR 2 is going to have a tough year, and I can 100% see this happening. It's a very niche market in a way, and it's a very expensive item. And as we all know, like buying these things on the launch window, in the launch windows, can be kind of tough. It's never the best. Every console that's released, every new product, there's always that window where you're like, oh, this is really cool, but the library isn't quite there. I think there will be a tough start, but it's really going to be fueled by word of mouth, like people saying these games are great, or like the PSVR 2 makes all the difference to VR. I think it will take a while before the wheels start going on this whole thing, before people start saying, oh, you know what, it might actually be worth shelling out the money for an additional VR, like a VR component to my PS5. Rob is moving on to a big showcase for Sony, for PlayStation this year, pretty much relaunching the console. And it's an interesting thought because 2022 didn't really have much of like a big Sony thing, you know. And now that we're coming out of the whole limited stock issues throughout the pandemic, Jim Ryan's pretty much said that stock issues are over. You'll start to see PlayStation 5s in the stores now. And it would make sense to me. You know, we're coming up in 3 years later this year of the console being out, and we're really past that like window where there's not too much out. You've had a bunch of exclusives, you've had a bunch of third-party games, you now have better availability of the console, you've got PSVR 2, you've maybe got this new model of the console. There's a lot of reasons for which Sony could just sit down and be like, here's what the PlayStation 5 is, why you should be buying it now, and also here are all these games that are coming to the console soon. I think that would be really cool. I love the way that Sony does, like, when they do their conferences. I do find it really frustrating and annoying that sometimes they just kind of release stuff and like on Twitter, or you know, they'll just announce something on Twitter, but when they do like a state of play or a PlayStation showcase, it's really good, it's really entertaining, it's kind of to the point, and it's got big hitters in there. I'm hoping that this one is right. So then Steven is going for a prediction on a singular game here, Spider-Man 2. Steven thinks that this game is going to have a GTA-like character switcher between Peter Parker, Miles Morales, and Venom, which I don't know. I don't know if I could like fully agree with it. I think I could get behind the Miles Morales and Peter Parker thing. You know, it's a difficult one actually, come to think of it. My natural kind of impression of it would have been that the game telling you a story, like wants you to play certain characters at certain moments, so you'll have your Miles Morales missions and your Peter Parker missions, but then considering it will be an open world game, you got to think that you would have a choice of which one you want to play as, and then maybe upgrade trees. The whole Venom thing, I suppose, depends on what direction they take this character. Steven thinks that he's not going to be the main villain of the game, which, yeah, I think could be right as well, but I'm not sure about that one. Let me know what you think about that, if you'll be switching up the characters freely like GTA 5. Next up, we've got Liam, who thinks that Resident Evil 4 is going to be Push Square's Game of the Year in 2023, and this is by almost tradition at this point, because we gave Resident Evil 2 the Game of the Year in 2019, Resident Evil Village Game of the Year in 2021, and now 2023 we've got Resident Evil 4 remake. So I think the game looks brilliant. I've never played Resident Evil 4, so this will be a first time for me, but from what I'm hearing from the people that actually did play the game back in the day, that this looks like a fantastic and faithful recreation and sort of expansion on what they loved about that game back in the day. Capcom have been kind of hitting really well with these games. I don't think they're going to miss here, and yeah, I think it's going to be up there. It'll have a hard time going up against Spider-Man, I think, but we'll see. And lastly, for my prediction, this is a personal pick of mine. I think this is really going to be the year that developers fully embrace the PlayStation 5, really utilize its power and potential, and we're going to see a bit of a departure from the PS4. This will be the year that the PS4 starts to get left behind. I'm pretty sure that Sony said initially they were going to support the PS4 for 3 years, but even throughout 2022, there was little sprinklings of games that just dropped their PS4 versions, like Gotham Knights, for example, and we're going to see so much more of that this year. It's only natural that we eventually leave it behind, I think, because the PS4 was so big. It's a bit of a struggle in ways to see that happening, but yeah, 2023 is when we're really going to see the power of the PS5. It's when we're really going to get those games that push the console to its absolute limit, like we did with the PS4. I'm really excited that we are hopefully getting into that era now in 2023. But anyway, those have been our gaming predictions for 2023. Please let me know more of yours down below and what you think of some of the ones you heard here today. Thank you as always for watching. If you leave a like, that really does help us out, and if you're on the lookout for more gaming content with a real focus on PlayStation, then stick around here on Push Square and subscribe to the channel. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.